Previously on SquatchSpot, throughout our investigation of the California Sierra Nevada mountains, we have had a number of up-close and personal encounters with the Sasquatch. We had some very unusual experiences while out in the field, including possible red eye glow, equipment malfunctions, and unusual EMF readings in an area where I saw blurred figures moving through the woods. There were a number of disturbing headlines in local news. In July of 2020, a 54-year-old woman's camp was discovered in shambles. Her car crashed in a ravine a little ways away. During search and rescue operations, this woman was spotted twice moving through the woods, barefoot and in what was described as a dazed state. However, she was still able to elude search and rescue teams, and she is still unaccounted for. This disappearance occurred in very close proximity to where I had my encounter with Sasquatch in March of that same year. In August 2021, a husband and wife went on a day hike with their 1-year-old daughter and family dog near Devil's Gulch, an area which is on the Chowchilla mountain range in Mariposa County, a mountain range that has had numerous reported Sasquatch sightings over the years and a number of missing person cases which were featured on Missing 411. Tragically, this family was discovered dead on the trail. Authorities concluded the family perished as a result of hypothermia. The cause of the death to the dog was undetermined. There is considerable speculation regarding the Sasquatch. What are these creatures? What abilities do they have? And are they dangerous? But I've heard something moving up on the embankment above me here. Hello and welcome to SquatchSpot. I'm Darrin Smith and I hope all of you out there are doing well. I am currently back out in the field and I've returned to that location where we discovered those interesting footprint impressions. Clearly the first impression that we found was a double bear print. However, that second footprint impression was a little unusual. And I have returned to that location to kind of take another look around. And since we heard those unusual wood knocks that I was hearing up across the river here, up on that steep embankment, the forested embankment behind me there, I am very intrigued that there could be Sasquatch in the area. And I have decided that since tonight is the full moon, I would spend some time in this environment where I have plans to conduct some night surveillance. So that is the plan for today. I'm going to continue my investigation of this area, and then tonight we will situate ourselves up on one of these hillsides and conduct some night surveillance of this river gorge with the hopes of capturing the Sasquatch on camera. The footprints I am referring to were the ones we discovered along this river during our last outing. Though the first footprint impression we discovered was clearly a double bear print impression, the second impression is intriguing. The impression is roughly 10 inches long, and what caught my attention was the general shape, what appears to be toe print impressions, and this unusual protrusion coming off at this curious angle. Though some claim this is yet another bear track, I am not convinced, and I made a cast of this impression. There have been a number of proposed Sasquatch footprint impressions discovered with unusual oddities, which many researchers believe are deformities, likely the result of inbreeding. These discoveries are significant as they support the Sasquatch may be experiencing a decline in genetic diversity, and this theory adds credibility that the Sasquatch are here and now creatures of flesh and blood, and not visitors from another world or dimension, or spirit being. And it may also explain the Sasquatch's heightened interest in female humans. So that behind me there is that forested slope that I heard those intriguing wood knocks as I was returning to this area with that additional cast mix to make that cast of the other footprint impression. And they definitely were interesting because they did not sound like woodpecker. They were just some loud, what sounded like something was wrapping up against a tree. And I really do like this environment that we are investigating. I've done some reconnaissance on Google Earth. I have compiled a lot of the sighting reports and took note of the movement patterns that I felt that the Sasquatch were taking to get from one location to another. And there's a lot of very credible evidence out there that supports that the Sasquatch will move along these river gorges. And so I think we are absolutely in a good place here. And I do believe the Sasquatch are moving through these river gorges. And I think we're at an opportune time to encounter them. That footprint impression that we discovered was intriguing. And also tonight being the full moon, there are a lot of investigators that support that during the full moons, the animals are a little more active, and that also includes the Sasquatch. And oftentimes during the full moon, you can get some really interesting vocalizations. Now, I do have in my pack, I brought the parabolic microphone with me. However, whenever you're in areas near water, it is extremely difficult to get good sounds from your parabolic microphone. But I'm hoping once I get up to my surveillance location, I will be able to use the parabolic microphone to kind of listen in on the hillsides around us and these other slopes that we see, and hopefully we can get some interesting sounds without the water noise drowning out those sounds. So I do have the parabolic, and we will pull it out a little bit later tonight. And I'm just going to continue to kind of investigate this area. Now, I'm not going to stay down here too long because already it's getting at a time frame where I think I should be moving up to the areas where I will be conducting my nighttime surveillance. And the reason being is if the Sasquatch are hunkered down in this area, if they are hunkered down, for example, up on this forested embankment here, they are definitely aware of my presence. And the longer that I stay in this environment, the longer they're going to stay hunkered down. So the thought there is I should definitely get out of this area to kind of give them that confidence that there aren't people still kind of hanging out around here. But again, it's very difficult to elude a Sasquatch. It's very difficult to get yourself into an environment where they don't know that you're there, because I do believe there's a strong possibility the Sasquatch are somewhere in this river gorge, and I'm fairly confident that they are aware of my position. So I think we'll just kind of hang out here a little bit longer, looking for any sort of physical evidence that the Sasquatch have been moving through the area, and then we should get up into that area where we're going to be stationing ourselves to conduct our nighttime surveillance. Okay, now this is interesting. This is another impression here in this area that we've been investigating, and this is clearly not a bear track. There's no claws visible. It's only a partial print here, and it is interesting. Now, I'm definitely going to take out my tape measure and do some measurements here, but just looking at it, I would say it is not so large that it's not going to be falling out of human range. But this is very intriguing because you can clearly see there's a big toe there. You can clearly see toe definition. There's no claws on it. It's only a partial print because of this debris here. And it looks like it's really a pretty significant deep impression there, as if the individual that made it was quite heavy. So this is intriguing. I think we're in a good environment. I have not seen any evidence of human activity in the area. We are in a remote location, and the impressions that we found that double bear print, we found that unusual footprint shape that looked like it may have some unusual anomalies on it. Now, I just received a report recently after I posted that video where another researcher who's investigating the Sierra Nevada mountains here was gifted a cast, and this cast had some footprint anomalies. Now, I think that the anomalies we are seeing on the footprint impressions, to me, puts the Sasquatch back in that primitive category of undiscovered ape species or relic hominid, and I think they are dealing with a small gene pool that's not so diverse, and I think that's why we're finding these physical deformities on the footprint impressions, because they do not have that influx of fresh DNA, and so there's a lot of inbreeding going on, which is creating those altered footprint impressions, those birth defects or strange anomalies within the footprint castings. So that is another reason why I don't believe that these are interdimensional beings or extraterrestrial. I think they are here and now, and I think they are limited in their range, they're limited in their abilities, and they're also clearly limited in their gene pool. But this is very intriguing because we are in a remote location. This very much looks like a footprint to me. Clearly it is not a bear track, and I'm definitely going to put the pack down and do some measurements here and continue our investigation of this environment. The impression is measuring approximately 12 inches in length and 5.5 inches toe width. And although this does fall within human range, we are in a very remote location, and I have not found any evidence of human activity in the area. Clearly, this is not a bear track. There are no claw marks present, and what I find very intriguing are the toe impressions, most notably this rather large, circular big toe impression. With the two unidentified footprint impressions we discovered in the area, I continued my investigation, and I found a number of interesting impressions that does support there may indeed be Sasquatch in the area. So I spent quite a bit of time investigating along the river here, and I think at this point it's time for us to get up into the hills here to set up our evening surveillance station. And I don't particularly like doing this nighttime surveillance. I don't like being out in the cold, dark environment, sitting there waiting for something interesting to happen. It's just not something that I am really fond of doing. However, based on the influx of reports that we were getting, many of which were recent sighting reports, I really do think that we definitely have to be conducting this surveillance, and I think we are in the perfect location to be doing so because, as I mentioned numerous times already, I believe the Sasquatch are using these river gorges when moving about. So I think we are in a very good location, and with the full moon, I do think that the animals will be moving around a lot more, which means it's a good chance that the Sasquatch are going to be moving around quite a bit as well. So despite the fact that I'm not so excited about doing this sort of nighttime surveillance, I do think it is something important we need to do for our investigation. And at this point, I am going to get up into the hills here, get up on one of these ridges where I can look down into this river gorge and really have a good vantage point to conduct our nighttime surveillance. Okay, I really like this alcove here with this kind of rock enclosure area, because that's really going to protect me from the wind if there's wind coming in from these two sides. And there's a steep hill here and some more rocks on this side. So I like this area because it's really going to shelter me from a lot of the wind if it's coming from those directions. And I have a clear view down into the river gorge there. So I really do like this environment, also because of the fact that I have this tree cover here, so I am kind of concealed in this area, and I think this is where I'm going to be setting up my evening surveillance. Okay, this is definitely something then kind of unusual that happened that I think is noteworthy. But I was using the FLIR, and literally I could watch the battery just drain, and then the FLIR powered down. I don't know what happened. I have no explanation for this. The FLIR was fully charged, and so I was in the dark, and I was looking to switch the FLIR over to a backup battery that I have with me, and I fussed with the FLIR a bit. It powered back on, and now I almost have a complete battery charge on it. So that was really, really unusual. I've never seen that. I mean, literally I was watching the battery life just drain down, and then the unit powered off. And then when I got it back on, I could see I have almost full power on it. So that's just something I'm going to note, because again, we don't know what the Sasquatch are, and there's a lot of researchers out there that believe there's something unusual about them. And as I mentioned numerous times before on previous videos, we do seem to experience equipment malfunctions a lot when the Sasquatch are thought to be around. So that's intriguing in the sense that that was something just out of the ordinary. I've mentioned this a number of times before. I have done an incredible amount of trekking in the California Sierra Nevada mountains, and just in general, a lot of solo backpacking. And I've spent an incredible amount of time in the woods alone, and it generally doesn't bother me so much. But you may recall in the news recently, we had that family that mysteriously perished in the foothills here in Mariposa County. The husband and wife and their daughter were out on a day hike, and they were all found dead on the trail, including their dog. And an in-depth investigation went in to try to ascertain what had happened to that family, and the ruling was that the three humans perished of hyperthermia, exposure to extreme heat, and the dog, there was not an official ruling what happened to the dog, so they don't know what happened to the dog. But that whole incident was very unsettling, and there's a lot of discussion online about the hypothermia determination, and there's a lot of people out there that don't necessarily agree with that findings. And what's concerning is there's a lot of Sasquatch groups out there that are kind of going on the conspiracy that maybe the Sasquatch were involved. And this is very disturbing for me, because I spend an incredible amount of time in the field, and we have gotten in very close proximity to the Sasquatch. On my March 3rd, 2020 encounter, it was hiding in the brush there. And when I captured it on the floor on Goat Mountain after that tree fall, it was literally right in front of me, but I couldn't see it because my electronics were malfunctioning. So I have to admit that it is very troubling that there are a lot of individuals out there who believe that family perished as a result of their interaction with Sasquatch. There's a lot of people that believe that the Sasquatch are living in the abandoned mines up there, and maybe this family got too close, and the Sasquatch incapacitated them with infrasound. Now, I don't know if infrasound can kill a person, but I have to admit that since this encounter with this family and the close encounters that we've had with Sasquatch, I do get a little nervous now coming out into the forest alone, especially when conducting these late night surveillances. And tonight we had that unusual situation with the fleur. So before, I would say I wasn't so concerned being out in the woods alone, doing a lot of solo trekking and backpacking. But I have to admit now there are things that I do think about more frequently, and there are things like the possibility of the Sasquatch being a little more aggressive in nature. And I have to admit that is all very concerning, and it does create a little bit of apprehension for me. Were the Sasquatch involved in that incident? Honestly, I don't know. I tend to not think so, just because that area is not conducive for, it's not a, what I would consider a Sasquatch habitat. But again, there is the possibility the Okay, that was very unusual. We just saw a light down there by the river. Okay, that was really unusual. It was very brief. I can't say that it looked like a flashlight, like there was a light that was spreading illumination around. It looked like a contained light source that was just moving there for a second down there by the river. And I've flared that area numerous times now. There's nothing hot on the flare. There's nothing down there. I will point out that it is a little unusual, but the flare, like I said, it's not really getting that penetrating visual like we see. I don't know if it's because the river, that area is just cold, but it looks kind of foggy down there when I look at it through the flare. Without the flare, I can see the water from here. I can see the river. I can see the illumination of the banks. I can see the river down there. But using the flare, a lot of it is kind of like hazy, like foggy. So it's really surprising. I thought the flare was really going to give us a good penetrating look. And that light, I don't know what that light was, but I did see some sort of light down there by the river. It just was there for a little bit and it moved and it was out. So I'm not sure what that was, but I'm definitely going to maintain my position here and just keep observing this environment down here. I continued my surveillance of the area for several hours. However, I never did come to a conclusion what the light was that I observed near the river. I also heard movement of a very large animal moving on the embankment in close proximity to where I was situated. However, I did not see anything on the floor. However, based on the recent sightings that are being reported in this area, the unusual footprint impressions we discovered along the river, and the interesting happenings during our investigation of this area, I am very compelled to believe that the Sasquatch are in this area and are very likely moving along this river gorge, and I am definitely going to be monitoring this area closely in the future. And until next time, I'm Darrin Smith, and I'll see you here on SquatchSpot.